Well, who am
close
I kidding?
friend.
None of this equipment's going to last 10 years nowadays.
That's right. That's right. What are we talking about? Yeah,
I
there won't
took
be
out
any
a
no capacitor to change on it. Anyway.
unit the other day, Zach. It was a Westinghouse
Yeah.
high rely. Did you ever see one of those down there?
No, I don't know.
I had
With
to.
it pre-Nordine Westinghouse.
Yeah, this was when Westinghouse was a company before York bought them. This was a 1970s model unit,
Oh, good
and it
night.
was
I don't know if
still
I saw one
running
of those or
until the
not.
compressor quit this past winter. And they, went to go to air conditioning and didn't have anything. But what was unusual about this thing, and I got the condenser at our shop. I started to do a little video on it. They kept a flooded evaporator coil. They actually have a TXB that's on the liquid line, but the bulb is also on the liquid line. There's no equalizer or nothing. And all they're trying to do is get a little bit of superheat back to the compressor. And they said it was good for heat pumps. That's the reason some guy designed it at Westinghouse in the 60s. But they,
That's interesting.
there's
Never.
actually the liquid line goes through a coil in the accumulator to try to put some heat into the accumulator. And then it had another little place where it went through the suction line right before it got to the compressor. It had a heat exchanger in there as well.
Oh, so it's getting superheat later on in the cycle than it normally would.
Yeah,
it's trying to give some superheat to it.
I didn't understand. I didn't even know that's what it was. To tell you the truth, there's no metering device on the indoor coil, so everything
That's
happens
wild.
outside.
That's incredible. I'm trying to imagine that. So you have that warm liquid, and they're using it to add superheat on that flooded or saturated gas coming back. Maybe trying to get it to boil off completely.
I think it was probably a better heat pump for heat than it was for AC, but I mean, it worked apparently. And this thing, it had 22 in it, of course, R22, and I put the recovery jug on it. And that thing ran forever, and I couldn't hardly pick the jug up. So it had a bunch in it.
Oh, yeah, I guess
the serial numbers are crazy. I can't even find anything to decode them, but the best I could tell, it was from the 70s. Based on just my research. Now it had like a mechanically timed defrost.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just a really apparently it was a really good unit. It lasted this long.
Absolutely.
The line set had the big nuts, that where you bolted it on.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
The guy the fellow that lived there had actually installed it himself, along with some helpers from the local tech school or something to do the ductwork and stuff at the time. And the thing that should have given it away to me, they had insulated the liquid line like on a mini split. And it didn't even occur to me. I thought they just did it because.
Yeah.
But they did it because it could actually sweat.
That's so interesting. Oh, did it have service valves?
No, it didn't. It didn't have any service valves.
It reminds me of some of them units. Goodman made units like that, but they were trailer units.
Yeah, a lot of trailer units was that way. Yeah.
Man, that's interesting. I almost want to see a diagram of that sucker. See what it looked like.
I think you can probably find something. I saw there was some guys on the what is the old forum that was on the internet long before Facebook, and I think they're all on Facebook
HVAC Talk. That's got to be it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
they had some people on there that knew about it and had talked about it.
I bet they did.
Actually, around during the day.
You knew there's someone on it knew all about the high rely. I'm gonna look that up. That's just a cool idea. I mean, I like stuff like that, because I don't know. There'll be like one engineer or a group of engineers that discover this thing and use it, and it turns out to be like the best thing that's ever made or something. And it's just
it had that expansion valve on it. That I guess you call it an expansion valve. You might even call it a flow valve or something, but it was bolted on, with the flare nuts on both sides. Mm-hmm. It had never been touched. You could tell by looking at it. It didn't have an equalizer. It just had the one, bulb that went down and strapped to the liquid line. And that's how they were trying to control the superheat. That and with the heat exchangers in the accumulator and the liquid line coming back, or the suction line coming back to the compressor. That's where they was trying to get their superheat from.
That's very interesting. I like that.
But it was apparently a good one to last that long.
Yeah. Yeah.
I told them the new one not to even consider that it lasts with a third that long.
Yeah. You've been really spoiled. Especially if you get another Westinghouse.
Oh, yeah.
It's not going to be the same anymore. Oh,
of course, Nordine went 454 as well, didn't they?
Did they? I think almost all of them are 454.
Daikin was the only one that, of course, they was already in it. So, But somebody said it's because Daikin had patents on this and that. But also saw that Daikin said, "Hey, everybody can use it. We don't care here."
Yeah, yeah. I think they did. I don't know if they had patented it originally or what, but they've always been using it. And,
but I mean, it's going to be there if they're having to use it to make the R454. I mean, R32. It ain't like they're going to not have R32. It's a matter of, are they going to let you use it in 5 years or 6 years? Or
That's right. Because right now you'd be thinking, well, those Goodman units are looking pretty good. I imagine there's a lot of people going over to Johnstone or East Coast Metal or something to become dealers now.
Well,
because of the situation.
Mike Goodman had Coleman, and they had, which was the Johnson Control York, and they had Goodman. They recently, this particular group must have bought some stores down in Alabama or something, and they wound up getting a Mana as well. So they're pushing a Mana pretty hard right now, especially with this 454 shortage. So I'm able to get a Mana pretty much as cheap as I can Goodman, and you get the Copeland compressor in all of them, and you get the compressor blanket and what's that little Copeland compressor monitor that they put on there.
Oh yeah, the Emerson thing.
Yeah, Emerson.
Oh yeah, with the little blinky lights on it. Yeah.
But a lot of the good ones, especially the smaller ones, like the 1.5 and 2 tons, have been coming with those rotary compressors here lately. I don't even know who makes them.
I don't know either. I remember they came with them. Yeah, because I remember saying these are window units now.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what they look like.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember them, and I put in a lot of Manas. I don't remember having much issue with them at all, but this is a while back.
Like I say, I've put in a bunch of everything just because I pretty much go with what I can either get or what people want usually. And I don't hate any of them. I mean, I hate things about every one of them, but as far as really liking one over the other, there's not a lot of difference. I think the warranty is pretty much the same. The thing I do like about the Johnson Controls and the Coleman, of course, that's probably going to change now that Bosch is taking them over, is they offered that in-house labor warranty that I could buy. And you could get a 10-year labor warranty from Johnson Controls, for the labor. So if I go out and I had to replace a fan motor, an ECM fan motor up in the attic the other day. They had it in stock at Johnstone. I went and got it, brought it back, put it in, took it back. They filed the paperwork for me. A month later, I got a check from Johnson Controls for my labor, which was more than I would have charged the lady for it anyway.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Well, the Goodman and Amana did that too. There's like their Good Assure.
They had I remember that. They had that. I don't think did they still do that? Is that?
I don't know. I had that, but you're talking about when I signed up for that. That would have been about. It probably would have been 10 years ago, almost. So they might not have it anymore.
I had to get approved to do one of those because the people had bought that warranty. It was something I didn't install, and I went to check it, and it had a bad something or another, and they paid me, but I had to, do the paperwork to get signed up to be that service provider.
Yeah.
But I'm the type that if they'll go ahead and get that, if they would buy that 10-year warranty, it saves me money, because if I have a compressor or something quit in a year and a half, and I gave them a 1-year labor warranty, I still fix it and don't charge them nothing, because it shouldn't have went out in a year and a half, But
yeah.
This way, if it goes out in 3 months, I get paid for it.
Yeah, it is.
And nice. I have had some compressors, die within a month, just you come out and one's making a racket inside and something broke. And it's like, this thing's less than 30 days old, guys. Oh, no worries. We'll give you a new unit. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All of us would rather replace a unit than a compressor, I'm sure.
Yeah, especially on a new one, because you figure, because always with replacing a compressor, there's a risk of a snowball of problems based on what happened with that compressor. And so it's nice not to have to worry about that.
And if you hadn't done it in the last few years, during the pandemic, I guess Square D breakers and stuff kind of got hard to come by, probably just like everything else. And there was this outfit that got started up called Heartland Controls, and they're based in the Heartland, but everything comes from China. So a lot of the contactors, a lot of the breakers, they're all saying Heartland Controls on them. And I've had several breakers just die, be crackling and popping. And then I've had some contactors that just get loud and rattly, and they're all Heartland controls, you know.
Oh no.
So I hate that. The fact that we used to have some pretty good stuff, and just because the supply chain got screwed up, now we got stuff that's not quite as good.
Like Tractor Supply or something.
Yeah.
Those are nice farm implements from overseas. Or it's just funny. I mean, we had a place in the local town here, Wallace, that supplied people with stuff like farm equipment and farm supplies, like your fencing and stuff like that. Then there's Tractor Supply. And the guys, they had stickers made, like anti-Tractor Supply stickers in their store, because their store was local. They got stuff locally, and then Tractor Supply, it's like Harbor Freight Farm Edition to me. I still go there, but I understand what it is. And plus, the other store closed; they went out of business. And of course, Tractor Supply is still doing fine. And the Tractor Supply carries Evapo-Rust, so I'm gonna keep on going there because no one else does. But Harbor Freight does. Oddly enough, it's so strange. But what are you going to do? These places come up, and you can't really avoid using them.
No, I mean, especially if they put the other people out of business. But
yeah,
and it's like capacitors. You can Triton. You can get the made in China ones, or you can get the made in USA ones. The made in USA ones cost twice as much, but one thing I like about them, they'll fit in the carrier units, because like the 35s and 40s aren't this big around like the Chinese made ones.
Yeah.
So capacitors don't cost that much. Go ahead and buy the USA ones when you can,
Yeah, so I try to get nice capacitors back in the day. Even when they were not necessarily USA made, I try to get the nicest ones that I had the best track record with. Oddly enough, I got jarred capacitors for a while because they didn't seem to go bad. But then,
well, they were in a lot of original equipment stuff, seemed like.
Yeah, they were in a lot
of
those.
Some of the capacitors used to actually say GE on them in Mexico or something, and they were pretty good stuff. You'll find them in new unit or old units that you take out. It's original because it's got a Goodman part number stamped on it, or an American Standard part number stamped on it, or something.
Yeah, or it fit in the hole.
Yeah, it fit in the hole.
It wasn't sitting on top of the hole with a zip tie on it. Yeah, the ream. That's exactly right. The ream, because you have to put like screws and put like washers and stuff, try to make them all fit in there.
And then you end up on some of them wrapping tape around them because the capacitor got a little bit smaller than the hole.
That's exactly right.
We didn't have to roll our lip over as much in China to make this seal up. We got a special way we do it, so our lips don't stick out as far as we can.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I could just see that, taking that capacitor up there and go whoop. Say, what's the deal? It's just like a 16th of an inch.
Yeah, it ain't much. It's just if you just hold your mouth wrong, it falls in.
So here comes the electrical tape, and that works and does the job. And then somebody judges you later, but it was fine. But I don't know. That's part of being a service tech. You kind of overcome some of that stuff because like ream. If you don't have like some of these chunky capacitors, the holes don't work. The older reams, and it's just the way it is. So either sometimes I'd put them inside that little compartment on the top if there was enough room, or underneath it or something. But then underneath it gets like as dirty as places you could possibly imagine in that main compartment.
Sure.
The coils,
all the grass and everything goes in there.
Oh yeah. They were just a mess. But I still like those.
They were great. You get right to the compressor when you had to change something. That's wonderful.
Oh my gosh.
I love that design.
Fantastic. Of course, they got rid of that. I like the newer ones too, sort of. Yeah. They had that big panel you can take off in the front, and you can get pretty good access with that wide panel to the condenser area. But some of them things you can't reach in nothing.
I had a compressor change out in I think it was a 3.5 ton Goodman the other day, and I had to climb down in the thing to clean it out, get the stuff out of it, and lift the compressor over into it. I mean, I couldn't get it up high enough to set it down in there if the thing was just too tall.
That's wild.
But I could fit in it. I just got a ladder, leaned it up against the house, climbed up, stepped down in it, unsweated the old compressor. Of course, then you got to try to hold your breath.
Yeah.
Pulled it out, put the new one in. Somebody was talking the other day about the compressors. You put those loops, and sometimes they'll even put the little reducer copper that's 7/8 and jumps down to 3/4 right before it goes in. They're saying you're supposed to cut those things out. How are you going to put it back together again without making a heck of a mess? What I usually do on those is I'll put the nitrogen in on the suction port, the true suction port. Most of my stuff's heat pumps, and that way it's going through the compressor, because it'll go through the check valve, and you can of course confirm that. But then I unsweat the discharge first, so you got the nitrogen coming through, and you can just pop it out right quick. And then I unsweat the suction line and pull it out. And of course, you usually get a little bit of oil and a little bit of flame. But I mean, otherwise, you're going to have to repop the whole inside of that condenser. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I was imagining when you were talking about that, it says the flames coming.
Yeah.
There will be a short.
You're standing down there with it between your legs, like that good one the other day. You got to be a little more careful.
That's funny. As long as you know it's coming.
Yeah,
it's okay because you can prepare and make sure your leg hairs aren't singed off or something. But yeah,
my brother-in-law was talking about one of them old barg units, that hung on the side of the trailers at the schools. A lot of the kindergarten and first graders wound up in trailers when they started getting more population and no money to build schools with. So they were hanging on the side of those things. Most of them was built in the late 60s, early 70s. And he said they were taking one out one time and it popped out like that. Sometimes the old valves and the reciprocating compressors would burp or something and squirt something out at you. He said flame went all the way up the side of that thing. And of course, if you got the panel open, you're looking right in through the filter hole into the trailer. Said the teacher freaked out since he had every one of them kids jumping out the door.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Yeah, I've worked on a few of those wall hung units, and they're kind of funny. That I can only imagine all the kids seeing that.
I don't get to see them much anymore since I left the schools, but some of the electric substations here around have them on their control rooms. And I'll get them some parts for them or work on them sometimes. But
yeah, it's been a long time. All the ones I ever worked on seem to be high off the ground. They were never the ones like lower down, like you have like cooling off like server area or something like that. It was always like 15 foot up in the air. So I didn't like them.
I put a new one on one of those old trailers at the school, and what they had done, they had put two of those trailers in there and put them about 3 foot apart, and the units were opposing each other, blowing that hot air on each other.
Yeah.
But what made it really bad for us then, you couldn't get any equipment in there to take it off the side. So we got the bright idea to go to Tractor Supply and get some of those big old bumper jacks. And the thing I didn't know about those bumper jacks is when you raise them up to get your next click, it releases them. And it came down all at one time.
Oh, that must have been something.
So we got the old one off real quick, and then we had to figure out a way to put the new one up.
Boom, uninstalled. Oh my gosh.
Not to do again.
Yeah. Well, you got to learn somehow. I've done some stuff like that, I'm sure.
I was thinking about the YouTube videos. I got one on there where I replaced a TXD with a piston and an old carrier.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an old unit, but it was a landlord. And it's actually the landlord I bought my building from. So he's got a lot of properties around. But one particular person was telling me, you did that customer disservice, in the comments. You should have sold them a new unit, yada, yada, yada. This was in 2014 or 2015. I posted that video.
Mm-hmm.
That thing is still running today.
I bet.
I bet. I hope I'm still doing it long enough to replace it so I can do another video and say,
that
this
would
is
be
the one
nice.
I was supposed to replace 11 or 12 years ago, but it still made it.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
He paid, the same thing. I was there for 2 hours, and that was counting probably doing the video. And he paid me down. A couple $300, and he's been going for another 10 years. You can't beat that. The new equipment would probably be broke by now if I'd have put a new one in.
You probably would. You probably change that sucker out now. Have to face these refrigerant problems, but now you don't have to face that because did you use with that piston? Did you get the assembly for that piston?
No, I think the people that sold Nordyne over in Johnson City, they had a piston holder. And I think it held the little Nordyne pistons, the small
bullet-looking things. Yeah.
But the bad part about it was one of the big brass pieces didn't have any copper coming out of it. So it was a bear to sweat you a piece of 3/8 copper into.
Oh.
So I would wind up using a lot of that 56% with the flux on it.
I remember this video. I remember you doing this because you were using some other kind of brazing material.
Yeah, because I couldn't. You can't hardly get that stuff to stick. You can't get it hot enough or something. I don't know. I couldn't anyway. Somebody else might be able to, but that stuff worked like a charm. Yeah. But Lennox had that. I think you showed it to me one time. They had a piston holder that had true 3/8 copper coming out both sides and had the was it chafflet type?
Yeah, I just call them Goodman style. But yes, yeah, I bought a few of those and used those.
Yeah,
after you've done that, I was like, Yeah, that's a good idea.
And anytime people would ask me about one, I said, well, this is what I use, but here's what you need to use.
Yeah. Here's the official.
You get a lot of emails when you do some YouTube videos. Just people will email you and ask you, hey, I'm getting ready to do this. I watched your video. Where did you get that? Or where can I get one? And you can say, well, you can get this one, or you can get the new improved one that Zack showed me. It comes from Linux.
I couldn't get the other stuff. I was like, I want to get something that looks real simple. And that thing looks simple. I mean, you just, the 2 copper sections, easy to put on.
Yeah.
Go about your life. I like that, But that's something we had to do a lot because the TXVs were failing. In that same time period, there's a lot of TXVs, especially on the Goodman end, that were dying. And we ended up putting the pistons
back. I think a lot of that was that Copeland, wasn't it? When they had that rust inhibitor.
It was around in there.
That's around 2014, 2015 units.
Mm-hmm. It could definitely have been that. Yeah, for sure.
I found out it was some third party was putting rust inhibitor on the parts, and it was clogging up the TXVs.
Nothing little AC Renew can't fix.
Yeah, that's when AC Renew stock shot way up, didn't it?
Yeah. And then they were all of a sudden, everybody's like, this is fine to put in there now. This is great. You can add it to a system, no problem. Before it's like, never do this, never had anything, but now it's fine because they would have had a handful of problems.
Some people even had luck with the Supco 88, the diesel fuel smelling stuff.
Yeah. Oh man, Supco 88. Use it at your own risk, though. It tips over in the van. It's not good because that's what happened. It's the worst smell in the world.
I did fix a American Standard. Well, it was American Standard or Train, depending on if you took the sticker off that was on the side of it up on that unit. But it was about 10, 12 years old, I guess, at the time, and it had the orifices that was made into the evaporator on the end where the capillary tubes came up, and they had a whole kit where you unsweated all that and you put a TXV with about 14 small copper lines you had to braze in. I stuck some Supco 88 in that thing, and it was still running when the people moved recently. It wasn't their building, but the part of their lease was they had to maintain the equipment, which would mean if it had to be replaced, they'd have to replace it, and they didn't want to replace it.
Right.
So I said, hey, we can try this snake oil. Let's see what it does. It worked.
It seemed like that stuff did work. I mean, I don't know how often it worked, but it seemed like it did work.
You can put it in your lawnmowers too,
You can do anything. It's a multi-purpose fluid, that's for sure. Still got a bottle somewhere, probably around here.